Hi guys, so I'm back with the third video in this political science crash course, and in this video we are going to talk about Aristotle. So we have already covered Socrates and Plato in the last two videos, and Aristotle will basically be a continuation of Plato and with certain modifications. So in this video we are just going to see what modifications Aristotle made to Plato's ideas and what were the unique features of Aristotle's philosophy. So this is about me. You can read more about me. You can just pause the video and read more about me if you want to. I'll just move on. So so as usual, this is the period. So he comes after Plato, and this is how you're going to form the timeline. As I've spoken about time and again, that the timeline needs to be very clear so that you are able to answer Western political thought questions very well. So this is the timeline that we have covered so far. This we have covered, this we have covered, and this video we are going to deal with Aristotle. This is the period which we are going to concern ourselves. So now the main thing that distinguishes Aristotle and the main modification that Aristotle made over the philosophy of Plato was that he inserted the idea of practicability and common sense in politics. If you go back to the Plato video, I've spoken about that Plato was always concerned about the ideal state, okay, the ideal king, which Plato called the philosopher king. Okay, so Plato was always concerned with everything that was ideal. He wanted a perfect idea of justice. He wanted the perfect idea of state, the perfect idea of king. So that's why he suggested radical solutions like communism of property and communism of family. Okay, but Aristotle, he was one of the most ardent followers of Plato, but he realized that you cannot exactly find these ideal things. Okay, you cannot actually find an ideal state. You cannot actually find an ideal king. These are all utopian concepts. This is what Aristotle believed. Okay, he believed that these ideal states are actually utopian. They don't exist. They are just theoretical. Okay, so he suggested that to make politics more in tune with the ideas, with the philosophies given by Plato, uh, they have to be tempered with a lot of common sense and a lot of practicability. Practicability means that the ideas that you give, they must be them. You must be able to put them to practice. Okay, if you're not able to put them into practice, that's useless. There's no point of suggesting something like ideal state which you cannot put to practice. Okay, because according to Aristotle, something like an ideal state, or the rule of philosopher king, in real terms, when you put it into practice, it turns into tyranny. Okay, dictatorship. So Aristotle, the major overarching philosophy of Aristotle was that you have to find something that is based on common sense. Okay, something that can be put to practice. This was the main idea of Aristotle, and whatever is said, all the ideas that he gave, all the concepts that he came up with, they were all based on this foundation of common sense and practicability. These are the two key words that you must use in any answer concerning Aristotle. Okay, so as we know, Socrates was the father of philosophy. Okay, Plato was the father of political philosophy, right? And then we come to Aristotle, who is known as the father of political science. Why science? Because he inserted certain ideas which were more scientific than what Plato had suggested. Okay, so we'll know more about that in this video. So for now, you can just remember that Socrates was the father of philosophy. Plato was the father of political philosophy, and Aristotle was the father of political science, right? So now, as we have already discussed for Plato and Socrates, the first thing that most of these thinkers start with is the concept of state. whether state is natural, whether it's forced upon the people, or what it is exactly. So Socrates and Plato, they had both held that state is natural. Okay, state is natural, and Plato actually wanted the ideal state. They both supported the existence of this entity called state. Okay, and we'll see that the evolution of this concept is how Western political thought actually evolves. So state, it evolves from Socrates, Plato, all the way down to Mill, J.S. Mill, then have Marx, then we'll have Ramsey. Okay, so we'll see this evolution in the later videos. For now, we'll concern ourselves with the theory of state given by Aristotle. So, just like Plato said that state is natural, you have three categories of people. Okay, ruling class, soldier class, and producer class. So Aristotle basically, he supported that idea, and he gave certain modifications, and he held that you need a hierarchy of institutions to support the hierarchy of needs of the human society. Okay, so man, if this is man, then his immediate institution is family. Okay, the next one you can say village. Okay, hypothetically we are saying. Okay, the next we may say, we can say whatever I want to say. Okay, let's say X. Okay, the next may be state. Okay, so these are all the institutions under which man is functioning, right? So man is under family, is under village, is under many other institutions, like it may be under a panchayat or something in modern day, and finally it's under the overall sovereignty of state. Okay, so this creates a hierarchy, like first, at the top you have state, then you have something, then you have something, then you have village, then you have a family, and then you have man. So this is a hierarchy, okay? Yet this is the top, nobody above state, right? So you need a hierarchy of institutions to satisfy the hierarchy of needs, because the needs of man, some needs of man are social, okay? Some are political, some are economic. Okay, so man has various kinds of needs. So for example, some are personal needs also. Okay, so the personal needs are satisfied by family. The political needs may be satisfied by village. The economic needs may be satisfied by some institution in this X. Okay. The political, the combination of political and economic can be satisfied by state. So you basically need a number of institutions which are there to satisfy the various kinds of needs of man. Okay. And all these needs, they are in the form of a hierarchy, similar to how the institutions are there. Okay, so this was a theory of state that Aristotle gave, and he also held that state is natural. This is the thing, state is natural, man is political by nature. There is no force on, nobody is exerting any kind of coercive force on man to be part of the state. State is very natural, and it arises in the needs of man. Okay, man needs state. Okay, so this is this is the biggest similarity between Plato and Aristotle, the concept of state. And after Aristotle, we'll see how the concept of state actually changes, how the later thinkers, they came up with different ideas about state, right? So state arises in the inherent needs of man. Man needs state. And the criticism, as we'll study later, Marx, he held that state is the instrument of the dominant class, and it's an instrument of exploitation. Similarly, Gandhi also wanted a stateless society. We'll read more about these in the later videos, but this is just a summary of the criticism that is there of Aristotle's theory of state. Next, we come to the theory of citizenship. Okay, so this theory of citizenship is actually one of the trademark theories of Aristotle, because we are still debating on Aristotle's theory, and there's still no consensus. There are people who agree, there are people who disagree with this theory of citizenship. Now, Aristotle had a very stringent criteria for citizenship. Right? Because he excluded most of the people, like aliens were excluded. Aliens mean those who don't belong to that particular political community. So for example, a Pakistani would be an alien in India, right? The aliens are included, sorry, excluded. Old people are excluded, women are excluded, children are excluded, slaves are excluded, right? So they're all excluded, they cannot be citizens, right? So this is a very not so inclusive definition. Now, the reason is that Aristotle believed that citizenship as such is a very privileged status. It carries a lot of responsibility with it. You cannot just be a citizen, a passive citizen. Okay? Carries a lot of responsibility. And only those who are capable of carrying out this responsibility are fit enough to be citizens. Now, these aliens, old people, women, children, and slaves, they, according to Aristotle, they were not good enough to perform the duty of a citizen. Yeah, and the duty of a citizen was participation in the affairs of a city state. So this is where come up with the concept of civic participation. Civic participation means if I'm a citizen, I must be able to influence the affairs of my community. Okay, so if I'm if X is the municipal corporation uh, of my area. Okay, so if I am to be a citizen, then I must be someone who is able to influence the policies of this corporation, able to influence how this corporation is actually governing my area, right? If I'm unable to do that, then I'm not fit to be a citizen. So Aristotle held that all these categories, they are not good enough to participate, and they are not good enough for civic participation. Now the civic participation thing will it was later revived by Hannah Arendt, because this concept will see it started with Aristotle. The idea was I would say uh, prominently highlighted by Aristotle, and later on it was carried forward by Hannah Arendt, right? So according to Aristotle, a citizen is an adult Greek male who possesses property. Okay, why property? Because you need to possess property to attain this privileged status. So this is Aristotle's criteria of citizenship. Okay, this is very restrictive in contemporary sense. It is very restrictive because if you consider this criteria as citizenship criteria for present day, most of the Indians will be non-citizens, right? So it has been criticized by feminists, and it has been criticized by many other thinkers as well. Feminists held that this theory is actually used to keep women away from the right to vote. Women were not given right to vote for a long period of time, and even European countries, they started only in the 19th century. Okay, right to vote for women. I think it was New Zealand first gave the right to vote to women. Okay, so this was used by most states to justify this thing, to keep women, to not give voting rights to women. Okay, now next we come to the theory of slavery. So you see, slaves. Aristotle held that slaves are not fit to be citizens. So why, to justify this, why came up with the theory of slavery? Okay, so slavery. This is a very debatable theory that was given by Aristotle, but we have to understand that this was given in a specific period of time. So we have to consider all his theories in the context, the time period that he lived in. Yeah. So you have to keep this in mind at all points of time, that the context is very important. You cannot justify this theory of slavery with the modern day situation, right? So Aristotle held that slavery is natural and desirable, and it has a lot of functional utility for the society. What does this mean? Functional utility means performs a lot of useful functions for the society. Okay, so if a slave is there, the slave actually performs a lot of useful functions for the societies. So just like you have a system of let's say you know let's say group A officers in the government, so they perform a lot of useful functions for the state. So that's why they are they have functional utility. Similarly, Aristotle held that slaves also have this kind of functionality. Now, who is a slave? Okay, so definition is important. According to Aristotle, a slave is someone who does not have mental strength. This is the defining criteria. A slave is not mentally strong enough. He cannot take decisions or stand by the consequences of his decisions. Okay. So that means that I take a decision that I want to buy a house. Okay. And then I take a loan, right? I take a loan from a bank and I promise to pay back the loan. And then I cannot stand by my promise. Not stand by my promise. So ideally, in Aristotle terms, I'm a slave, right? So you have to realize the depth of the definition. Who is a slave? Slave is not someone who just the idea of slave that is entrenched in our minds, that is about, that is of slavery of the 16th and 17th century. Slaves were working in the American and European plantations. Okay, so that is the picture we have in our minds, but that is not the definition that Aristotle had highlighted. For him, the slave was someone who did not have the mental strength to support his own decisions. He was not mentally strong enough to take decisions. Okay, why? Because mental strength requires reason, and slaves did not have reason. This is the So you see, this is similar to what Plato had earlier highlighted, that reason should dominate courage, courage should dominate appetite in an ideal, okay, ideal human being who is fit to be part of ruling class. So there is a similarity with Plato. So if you don't have reason and you lack the necessary mental strength, you are a slave. But the thing is, Aristotle also held that slavery is not permanent. Okay, if you are born a slave, it doesn't mean you remain a slave throughout your life. There is a reformative aspect also. Reformative aspect is that slaves should be liberated if they develop virtues. Okay, so if a slave, it develops certain virtues like honesty, integrity, all these virtues it develops, then he can be liberated. Okay, so liberated, why? Because these virtues, if he develops virtues, many other virtues can be there. Okay, so if he develops these virtues, that means he is gaining reason. Okay, so if someone is gaining reason, then he can no longer fit the criteria of a slave and he has to be liberated. So that was Aristotle's prescription. Now this slavery, as you can see, it has been criticized by a number of thinkers, especially contemporary thinkers. They vehemently criticize this theory because it justified something, justified the exploitation of Africans and Asians by European colonialists for a long time. Okay, so this theory was used, right? Aristotle's theory of slavery, that slaves are natural and desirable. Under the garb of this theory, the British, the colonialists, they exploited the slaves, and you must have read about that in world history. So one of the major critics was Immanuel Kant, and he held that each man is an end in himself. Was one of the major critics, right? Okay, so now we come to the theory of property, and this is where Plato has a strong difference with Aristotle. Okay, because Aristotle criticized Plato's theory of property. What had Plato had actually suggested communism of property, no private property, to to get rid of the evil of corruption. But Aristotle, he believed that that is not a really good solution. Again, the what was the major idea of Aristotle? You have to you have to root all your concepts in common sense, and this communism of property, it betrays common sense. So if you are a king, howsoever ideal you are, howsoever virtuous you are, if you have no property, maybe that'll that'll be a demotivating factor. It's betraying common sense. So this is what Aristotle held, that property is a time tested institution. It has been there since ages. It has utility for human beings. You cannot simply ban private property like Plato suggested. So what Aristotle suggested was individual ownership and common use of property. Okay. Why? Because man is social. Yeah, man is social, man is political, and has hierarchy of needs. I have already pointed out. So man needs certain institutions, man needs society. So man should also contribute to the requirements of society. So you have individual ownership and common use. Now this we'll study later. This is similar to what Gandhi held in his theory of trusteeship. This is exactly the same theory. Okay, trusteeship, and later was also put into practice by Vinoba Bhave with Bhudan movement. Okay, so this is how you link these. So by mentioning this concept of individual ownership and common use of property, and highlighting that man and society are actually interlinked, man and society are interlinked, and that man is not, man is not an atom by himself. Okay, not an atom. Okay, he's not an island. He's linked with the society. Not an island, he's linked. This is an organic linkage. Okay, so this was basically the foundation of welfare state, right? We'll read more about welfare state in the political theory videos. Okay, this was the origin of the whole concept of welfare state. So regarding this welfare state, we have lots and lots of theories. Even there is something called Bakshi by Kautilya. This was also variant of welfare state theory. So we'll read more about them in the later videos. For now, just need to remember that Aristotle's theory of property was one of the earliest precursors of the concept of welfare state. So then we come to the theory of justice. Again, yet another main, uh, yet another major, I would say, concepts, that is justice. So we have seen state, we have seen property, in justice. Okay, so these are the major concepts that most of these thinkers have talked about. Okay, so justice, why justice? Because according to Aristotle, if there is inequality in society, there is concentration of wealth, if there is lack of access to justice, it leads to revolutions, leads to instability. And that is exactly the situation that Aristotle wanted to avoid. Okay, Aristotle wanted a state that can preserve stability. Okay, so this was his uh, objective. Since this was his objective, he did not want revolutions to happen. So to avoid revolutions, he gave this theory of justice, because inequality is the root cause of injustice, which is a which is an ingredient of revolution. Now he gave the concept of proportionate justice. Okay, what proportionate justice means is that you know there has to be a differential system of reward. Like uh, if you if I am contributing X to society, then my reward should be X. If I am contributing X minus 2, then my reward should also be X minus. Like if I am working for 7 hours in a day, then I should get a reward of 7x. If I'm working for 10 hours in a day, then my reward should be 10x. Okay, so if both this 7-hour guy and this 10-hour guy, if both receive the same reward, then it will be a recipe for injustice. Okay, so he prescribed this differential system of reward. Now if you pay the same salary, okay, if you pay the same, for example, if you pay the same salary to let's say a clerk who merely types things. Okay, clerk in a government office, you pay the same salary to him and the prime minister of the country. The salary is the same. That just reflects injustice. You are not respecting the difference in the quality of work that is being done by these two. Okay, you are not saying that clerks are not needed or they are inferior to the PM, but it means that the quality of work, the difference in quality should be respected. If you don't respect the difference in quality, it will breed a lot of inequality. People will feel that even if I work harder, there is no extra reward for me. So what is the point of working hard? And this is exactly what happened in communism later on, USSR. This was one of the major reasons of the collapse of USSR, why USA still stayed intact, because there was no differential system of rewards. USSR mein everybody, idea was ki whether you work or not, you get certain benefits as god given from society, right? So this was the major idea: treat equals equally and unequals unequally, right? So this is what we have spoken about already. Okay, now this statement, authority of a master and that of a statesman are different from each other. This is asked quite often in the context of Aristotle. This only means that master means the head of a family. Statesman means he's a, I would say, roughly equivalent to a uh, politician in contemporary terms. Okay, a politician, and this master is head of family. So in a family, you know you can have absolute control, right? You can have absolute control, but in a political community you cannot be a dictator, right? So the statesman cannot have the same kind of authority as a master. So if I'm the head of a family, I'm the earning member, so I can say, these are the rules of the house and these have to be observed without without any kind of exceptions. But a statesman cannot just give out such diktats. Okay, he cannot just one fine day cannot just say, this has to be done, this must not be done. So a statesman authority must be derived from his public authority. Okay, he has to consult others. He has to keep in mind the kind of functions that he's entrusted with. He has to keep in mind a lot of other elements, not just not just his own wishes. This is just okay. So next we come to the theory of law. Now law was Aristotle's prescription against Plato's theory of philosopher king. Plato's philosopher king, Aristotle countered this with rule of law. Why? Because Aristotle held that rule of philosopher king is utopian. It cannot, cannot manifest reality. In reality, you can have rule of law. This is best practical. This can be put into practice. Why? Law is the outward manifestation of reason. So, if reason exists inside the mind of this man, okay, this is the man, and he has reason, and when he applies this reason, he will create law. The law is just the outward manifestation of the reason that is already inside. So for example, if you have something like quality of law. Okay, quality of law is there in Indian constitution. It is part of law. Okay, but how has it come about? It has come about from the reason that was there in the minds of the constitution makers. Okay, that's it. So Aristotle held that instead of relying on the benevolence, on the supremacy of this utopian philosopher king, it's better to have a rule of law. It's better to have something that can be manifested in reality. Okay, so that there is no scope of tyranny coming up. So this is considered to be the point where rule of law originated. Aristotle is held to be the father of rule of law. Read more about rule of law later, a brief summary. And this was the foundation for constitutionalism. Okay, so I've already mentioned constitution. Okay, so constitutionalism is grounded in this thing that if you have something inside your mind, you need to manifest it in a book of law, to make certain laws which depict that the reason has been taken into account. Merely having reason inside your mind and telling people that trust me, I'll use my reason for the benefit of everyone, that is not to be that is not the prescription. For Aristotle, this was the prescription, rule of law. So the interesting thing is that Plato came up with this book the later years of his life, and in that he had also accepted the importance of rule of law. Okay, so it now we come to the theory of revolution. Now why Aristotle came up with this theory? Because we have earlier studied that he was concerned with justice, and he believed that equality leads to injustice, and injustice is the cause of revolution, and revolution leads to an unstable state, and he did not want. Okay, so he gave this theory of revolution. Now revolution, it's not exactly the kind of violent uh, interpretation that we have contemporary period. According to Aristotle, revolution is anything, any change. Okay, any form of change, big or small, anything. Okay, and not necessarily violent. So if if you vote out know, the ruler, even that is revolution according to Aristotle, right? So revolution, what are the causes? These are the causes, as I've already mentioned. These are the causes: inequality, corruption, influx of foreigners, selfishness of ruling class, concentration of wealth. These are still valid in the contemporary period, right? So for this, he gave the antidote that you need a meritocratic society with differential system of reward. As I've already spoken about, this reward system was Aristotle's prescription, one of the major prescriptions. He You need to reward people based upon their merit, based upon their contribution to society. You cannot reward everyone similarly. Okay, and you can connect this with the system of one of the major criticisms of Indian bureaucracy, that is there is no variance in pay. Okay, like the bureaucrat who is a top performer, 10 out of 10, he also gets the same salary, and the one who is a very bad performer, 2 out of 10, he also gets the same salary. So that, according, many experts have pointed out that this is one of the major reasons why there is a lot of laxity and inefficiency in the Indian bureaucracy. You can see that Aristotle was actually one of the earliest to point this out, right? So this again highlighted the importance of reason, that politics need rational debate and collective decision making, and those who have reason, only they can participate in this. The ones who cannot participate, they are slaves. So that's why he gave the theory of slavery. Okay, so this is the last thing in Aristotle that we are going to read. He studied constitutions exhaustively. Okay, he was the father of rule of law, as I've already mentioned, and he was really concerned about form of constitution that is to be followed in a particular state. So these are the three kinds of ruling, I would say, that he had in mind. So if there is one ruler, and the ruler actually is this is actually the good version, short, this is the good, and this is the evil version. So if the ruler is a good one, which is actually utopia, as I've already mentioned, because it rarely happens. Okay, so this is utopia. So utopia mein good, if the ruler is good, it turns out to be monarchy or rule of philosopher king. And if he turns evil, it becomes tyranny. Again, if there are few rulers, okay, not one but few, and they are good rulers, okay, so it becomes aristocracy. If it becomes an evil system, it becomes oligarchy, right? Now if you have many rulers and it's a good system, it becomes polity. And if it's evil, it's democracy. Now this is a bit difficult to digest, that Aristotle held that democracy was just in the interest of the ruler. Okay, it was not in the interest of the people, because his interpretation of democracy was a bit different. So his ideal state of affairs was polity. This was his prescription, polity, where there were many rulers and is the golden mean. Why golden mean? Because you know polity is rule of middle class. So you have the rich class, then you have the middle class, then you have the poor class. So according to Aristotle, when you have rule of rich or when you have rule of poor, in both cases there is going to be clash of interest, because they are going to rule only in their own only in their own interests. Okay, so the rich will think only about the rich, poor will think only about the poor, and there will be the balance, there will be no balance in the system of administration. So if it's rule of poor, they'll not think about the rich, and it may turn out to be it may turn out you might have demagogues coming up, power hungry rulers. They'll just use the numbers, stay in power. If you have rich, if you have rule of rich and it turns out to be evil, then it might be an oligarchy. So few people will concentrate everything, the others will be left out in the lurch. Okay, to avoid this, Aristotle suggested that it has to be rule of middle class. The middle class is most ideally placed to to govern. Why? Because they have moderate wealth, and they have enough reason for qualitative participation in civic affairs. They're like midway. Okay, they're midway between the rich and the poor. And Aristotle's one of the major ideas of Aristotle, which we often use in ethics paper in GS4, is that golden mean is the golden rule. Okay, why golden mean is the golden rule? Because as already spoken about, Aristotle was not concerned with the ideal, not concerned with something that is perfect, something that is ideal, something that is flawless. He was not concerned about this. He was concerned about something that can be put to practice. So if you have to put something into practice, it has to be somewhere between something that is ideal and something that is not so ideal, or I would say bad. Okay, so something that has to be put to practice, it has to be midway between these two standards. Okay, cannot be perfectly ideal, and it cannot be something that is just does not have enough substance. Okay, so this was the major concern of Aristotle, right? And so that's why he suggested rule of middle class. Okay, so that it can act as a golden mean between oligarchy and both of them. According to Aristotle, they were not ideal forms of God. So in this rule of middle class, there would be no rich versus poor conflict. Why? Because middle class can take into account the interests of both. They are in the middle, right? So they can, both the rich, the rich can they can represent to the middle class, and the poor can also do it. So there is lot of scope of reconciliation of the conflict. So this is all that we have to study. We had to study in Aristotle, and in the next video we are going to know about Machiavelli. So that's it for now. Goodbye.